I guess really for me, I don't necessarily know exactly what you're trying to get at today, okay? But it's an opportunity for me, opportunity to kind of talk about exactly what I do, what my passion is. Also, just kind of connect with you all a little bit, see what your thought processes are, just see what your next steps are as well. And so for me, it's a really beautiful thing because obviously we're in Black History Month, but I have some reservations about that as well. And we can kind of discuss that a bit. And so what I'll do is I'll just talk to you a bit about what I do and why I do it. And you saw the video, but the video itself kind of talks about a bit of where my head is when I'm creating. It talks a little bit about, where my passion lies and how I develop that passion for art and just where my focus is when I'm creating. Just starting from, the purpose of even why I'm even here and showing my artwork, in this specific month, obviously it's Black History Month. Obviously it's important for us to celebrate the people that have come before us. And to celebrate the people before us, you kind of get this thought process of, who do we focus on? Who do we celebrate? Why are they celebrated? And why are they not celebrated more often? If you're not asking yourself some of those type of questions, then you're kind of missing, the objectivity of our purpose as, Black men and women in our society. As of today, for me, it's important to make sure that anytime that I'm creating mirrors and vantage points for anyone who is viewing my work, not just young people, but adults, children. That's important. Because if you don't see yourself in things that you do, a lot of times you can't envision yourself doing said thing. And so that's something that became a passion for me a long time ago. It's something that I really started to think about a long time ago, and I really started to change my whole thought process and why I create. I used to create these old iconic visuals of, just your classic rappers or your classic, musicians from jazz or just popular people, somebody that passed away. So I wanted to do something that was memorable. But that kind of got old, and it really got old because, as you know, these past 2.5 to 3 years have thrown a lot of information at us really fast. It caused us to question a lot of things really fast. And we didn't question a lot of these things in terms of how we operated, what we did in our daily lives as much as we probably should have. And so what I'm speaking about specifically is things that happen in our society. We start to question why is the way that we see things the way that they are. And it put us in a position to really start to focus on our culture, our people, and really our focus as Black men and women in our society today. The thing that you got to think about is this. If you see yourself or if you don't see yourself, then how can you put yourself in a society that is supposed to welcome you? And is it welcoming? I will argue that there's times where it's not very welcoming. But I will also argue that there are times where you can put yourself in society in a way that gives you an opportunity to be successful. That's part of the reason why I created. In the video, I stated that when I was creating those common, comfortable, iconic visuals of a variety of people that really didn't mean a whole lot to me, they were popular, but they weren't very popular. Not until I started creating something that meant something to me, when I started creating visuals that mean something to me, visuals of people who actually had a message, then people started to listen. When I started creating visuals of people like Emmett Till and trying to tell their story a little bit more, because it's a story that is not told very often, but it's a storyline of a man that would still be alive today if what happened to him had not happened. What you think about that? When I started painting visuals of someone like Ruby Bridges, who was literally had rocks thrown at her, spit at, was yelled and was screamed at as she tried to go to school in a place that had better opportunities, and is still alive today. See, I don't know if you all know, but you are presently stuck in a circumstance in your day and age in real time where these stories are being challenged. Think about that for a second. These stories that should be told, these stories that should be in the forefront of our messaging are being challenged. People are creating bills that will make it difficult for these stories to be told, that will make it virtually impossible for someone like myself who is in education to talk to you about these stories because it makes someone else uncomfortable. And that's a deep storyline for you. And that's reality. And that's happening right now. Currently, right now in Frankfurt, there's bills being proposed that says that you cannot teach these things. You can't talk about what we bridges. You got to ask yourself why. To be honest with you, I don't necessarily have a good answer for you. But I'll tell you one thing. The passion that I have as a man in this community, as a man in this society, as a man who has the opportunity and the freedoms to create, I want to continue to put these visuals out here. I want to continue to tell these stories because these stories are yours. No different than Emmett Till went through something that he should have gone through is the same thing that George Floyd went through in real time. The difference is there was a video camera to see. The same way that all these people had a story to tell and had to deal with atrocities within their circumstances, we can either quiet those stories and not understand, or we can amplify those stories and really honor their ability to persevere. So that's what I do it for. For me, it's important for the opportunity to show that we have the opportunity to persevere through challenges. We can look at these challenges and be like, you know what, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know what the next step looks like. The same thing with for all these people that have visuals. The same thing happened for their people that they were working with. But each and every day, they find a way to take a step forward and continue to fight for something better so that we can even do exactly what we're doing right now. So understand, my purpose is strong. My purpose is very clear. And it wasn't very clear at one point. And I want you all to continue to pay attention to what's happening around you, because if you don't, you will look around you and you'll think to yourself, this is not the type of circumstance that I envision myself being in, nor that I envision this being the circumstance for my children to be in. You all at that age to where here soon, you will have your own families. You will have to think about those things. Keep it above. About 6 years, you all will more than likely have a family. That's not that long from now. And if you're thinking about that, you're going to have to start asking yourself these difficult questions of, well, what does the educational system look like for my child? What does this educational system look like for her children or his children? That's a difficult question, especially when you have people who do not want to honor the perseverance, the trials and tribulations, the hard work, the dedication, and just the downright grit that was necessary to get through life that happened not too long ago. You're not so far removed from the realities of our struggle. You're not too far removed from the realities of the civil rights movement. A lot of people would even argue that Civil Rights 2.0 just took place, or is currently taking place. See, I'm very cautious about using certain words, but what I will say is, you have people who are fighting and fighting in a way that they will be considered at some point revolutionaries. Okay? Not only, and it's not your typical people. A lot of times it's people that look just like you. A lot of times it's people who are your age. When you look at the visuals of people who are fighting and who are putting forth the effort, a lot of times it's the young people that have the courage to stand up and say and speak their voice. You all even have power as of right now. You all have a choice in how you conduct yourself and what you stand for. What you post on social media now has impact. The things that you allow yourself to be connected to and the things that you do has impact. If you choose to utilize that impact, you can consider yourself powerful. But if you avert that, you don't allow yourself to be connected to things that are going to help you be as strong as you desire to be, then you're wasting a beautiful opportunity. And that's what I always try to focus on when I think about the challenges that we face today. The challenges that we face today, how do you face them? You stand up, you show up. You stand up and you show up and you do something. Something that means something to you. My way of facing these challenges is being creative. That's my voice. There are times where I don't speak very well, but there are times where I will always have the opportunity to create something that speaks to a deeper inner sense of self. Find your way. Figure out what it is that you do. Figure it is what you're passionate about. Because as we create mirrors and vantage points and historical perspectives for you two all to think about, seeing yourself is so important so that you can be the next ones too. Now, I know I just went on a little tangent there. I didn't anticipate saying all half that stuff I said, but are there any questions that you all have thought of or you're thinking of that, really you're curious about something that I may have said? Yes, sir.
Whenever I was their age, I didn't think about anything but music and video games. At what point did you find this voice?
So it's interesting. Like in high school, I was creating visuals of people like Malcolm X. I was creating visuals. So I'll tell you a story. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. And in Louisville, there is a variety of schools. It's not very simple like it is in Owensboro, where you just, because you live in a certain area, this is the school you go to. You have to apply to go to most of the schools that you go to, and you have choices. So like you have to pick. You put your top 3 schools out there, and one of those schools will definitely be your home school, but a lot of times you don't want to just go to your home school because there's things that's happening that will make your educational process challenging. So there was one school that I wanted to go to that was at the top of my list. It was DuPont Manual. Reason being, I love to draw. They have a visual arts program. So the way it's set up at that school is you have to declare a major when you apply. So you go in, you can either go into visual arts, you can go into math, science, technology, you can go into high school, university, or you can go into youth performing arts. Obviously, I chose visual arts, and choosing visual arts, my transition into that really gave me the opportunity to take art classes every year. I took 2 classes every day that were specifically designed around visual arts, and I had my full content classes outside of that. So that was my focus all the way through I graduated. My senior year, we had a gallery within the school, and I had to put on a senior art show. And so, where you were talking about, my thesis for my senior art show was the dichotomy of racial tension. And so I've kind of always been interested, and I've always observed, what would you do, or how would you feel if the shoes were reversed? So I wanted to do something that was controversial in a way. So what I did was I created visuals that posed white people in the opposite perspective or the opposite vantage point as black people. And so I did paintings where a black man was a slave owner and a white girl was in a dark room with the slave owner. And I did subtleties and it was very challenging. And somebody wrote an article on it, but it was very challenging, where the gentleman's, his belt buckle was unbuckled. Okay? You can kind of take that thought process wherever you want to, but that's a reality of black people's history. I also created another vision where a black man was asleep on a porch with a shotgun, and there were people in the background working out in the fields, or there were white people out in the fields working. Once again, very challenging thought process and a very difficult visual to take in. So then I also had white people outside of a shack and at a campfire, and I did visuals like this over and over again. So I had about 12 visuals where it was showing the opposite effect, and I wanted people to take that in and just really take in what do you feel when you look at these visuals. There were some people that had some very strong feelings about it, and they weren't very happy about it. So much so that one person went and complained to our principal, but our principal was very supportive of my thesis and what I wanted to do. And this is in high school. I was really trying to push people's thought process and really challenge them. I wanted to question, why is it that we don't talk about this in the way that it needs to be spoken about? These aren't slaves. These are people who were enslaved. Understand that message there. Okay? When you call somebody a slave, that means that's who they are. Our people were not slaves. Your people were kings, queens, hard workers, mathematicians. They were managers. They knew how to manage people. They were princesses. They were princes. That's who your people were. But because when they come to America, people force them to be something else, They try to force them in that narrative of being slaves. They were not slaves. They were people who were enslaved. There's a major difference. There's something that is forced upon you, not something that you are. Okay? So really think about that. Messaging is so important. And so I was young. I was high school thinking about these things because my brothers, my uncles, my mom, they always exposed me to things that made me question. They always questioned the narrative of things. And so I always paid attention to narratives. And so I always wanted to communicate those and put those out there in visuals. And so I really had a strong liking to portraits. And so that's how that transitions to what I do now. Great question. Anything else that you all would like to know? It doesn't have to be even deep or serious. It can be something simple. Go ahead.
I kind of know the concept of painting, like explain it.
So good deal. This painting here, this was a young lady who was participating in a march that was in St. Louis. And it was shortly after George Floyd was murdered. The interesting piece about that is this girl was 8 years old at the time of the march. It kind of speaks to that narrative of it's going to be your generation that has the true impact and true change. An 8-year-old out there that understood the gravity of the situation, and she's shouting, "No justice, no peace, no justice, no peace." And so I'm inspired by this video that I'm watching of this young lady just going in, really being passionate about what's going on, being passionate about someone that looks like her losing their life unjustly, based on the way the laws are written, and doing that without any reservation, not being afraid, full of charisma, full of passion. See, something that you'll learn is that as you get older, you become fearful. When you get older, you have things to lose. When you become established, you worry about people that are underneath you and below you. So that's why you don't see older people out there fighting for a cause as often as you see young people fighting, because they don't have that concept of loss. They don't have that same concept of fear. They don't have something to lose. You guys can get out there and get going because you still have the rest of your life ahead of you, whereas your 30, 40, 50-year-old folks that you look up to, they're thinking about what they could lose in a situation, so they don't have that same charisma that some young people do when they're out there fighting for a cause. So this 8-year-old is out there fighting for a cause. She was fighting for a cause during a George Floyd protest. And so there wasn't anything on her shirt, but I really wanted to connect, this visual to the cause that she was fighting for. So that's why I put the visual of George Floyd on her shirt. Good question. Yes, sir.
Can you explain the backstory on that painting over there?
So Emmett Till, if you don't know anything about Emmett Till, just understand this much. Emmett Till was brutally murdered. Brutally murdered by a lie. And that's really what, is deep about the whole situation. Emmett Till was from Chicago. He had family in Mississippi. He goes to visit Mississippi, see his family, his cousins. They're hanging out. They've actually done a documentary on him recently. And he's at a store, and the lie that was told was that he whistled at a woman, or was real fresh with a woman. So you gotta understand the difference in social understanding and social construct between someone who is from Chicago and someone who is in Mississippi. So in Mississippi, they expected black folk to be subservient. They expected black folk to do as they're told. They expected black folk to keep their head down and be respectful at all times. Yes, sir. This young man coming from Chicago, he's full of charisma. Listen, he knows who he is. He's confident. That was scary for somebody in Mississippi because they had never seen a black young man like him. I use other language, but you understand where I'm coming from. Hadn't seen a young man like him before. So this woman who's at the store tells her family, this little boy's getting fresher than me, he's whistling at me. These men, they can't handle that. They can't handle a little black boy getting fresh with their women, getting fresh with their ladies. That's the biggest fear of a white man, is seeing a black man with a white woman. If you don't believe me, look throughout history and how they castrated black men because they've even thought about being with white women. It's a reality. So what they do is they go in the middle of the night. They go to his cousin's home. And they knock on the door. Boom, boom, boom. Uncle comes to the door. They explain to him, listen, bring him on out here. Where's he at? The uncle, he's not understanding what exactly is about to take place. He's thinking that they're going to scare him a little bit. He's going to come back and make a mistake. But he didn't think that he had much of a choice because that means the entire family will be killed. Oh, they got their guns. They're with their trucks. They've come in numbers. They've come ready to do harm. He knows that. But he's an adult that has to think about his child. He has to sacrifice this cousin that's come down from Chicago to Mississippi. There's nothing that he can do because these are the same people that uphold the quote-unquote law of the land. He can't just go miles down the road and go get family to help him out. So he has to supply this boy. So what they do, they take it, they beat him, they torture him, they attach him to a cotton gin, and they throw him in the river. The visuals that you see around the face here are pictures of him before, and if you look toward the bottom, the old decrepit visuals are visuals of his open casket. His face bloated, expanded, destroyed, because fish had started to eat on his flesh from when they found his body, found his corpse. None of them were, they were tried, but it was a joke. They all knew that they weren't going to be convicted. And eventually, they go free after a couple of days. So that's where you get all this posting about it. These are newspaper clippings from the circumstance. This is national news. These are things that happened where this dude was the age of some of your grandparents. Think about if this was your grandfather. That's what I think about. I think about if that was my dad. It's about how old he would be today. I think about if it was Muhammad Ali, somebody I have such reverence for. These stories have to resonate with you because you cannot forget. What's going on right now will put you in a position to try to forget. I gotta be honest, I'm gonna be frank, they want white people to feel comfortable. Change does not come from comfort. Change comes because people are not comfortable anymore and people have to do something about it. You have to change because what you were accustomed to is no longer working. So you got to make people uncomfortable to a degree. That is the reality of our circumstances. So yes, this visual here represents that. That's the storyline, the gist of it. There's far more details, but that's pretty much what you have there. Any other questions? These are all good. Or any other piece that you see that you would like to explain.
I have a question.
Yes.
This one on the wall here.
Yes. Langston Hughes.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about him.
So Langston Hughes is an author and a poet that is from the Harlem Renaissance. And so he is someone who is a creative. And his work really speaks to the Black condition. And so what you'll see in my work, a lot of times I have a lot of text in my pieces. And what happens is that I try to create the visuals, but I'm inspired by people's words. And so you'll see over here in a very similar fashion, Maya Angelou's words. In this piece here, you'll see Muhammad Ali's words. So words are very powerful. What people say is very, very powerful, and it's very influential. And so very similar to the Langston Hughes piece, I always try to utilize a quote of some kind to try to get you to think, to try to inspire, to try to uplift. Okay, a lot of times I try to use a positive message, a motivational message of some kind, because when I get those words, they're motivating for me. So I try to utilize them. I try to put them into paintings because I want you to feel how I feel when I'm thinking about these people. So not only do I want you to feel some kind of way when you see the visual itself, but I also want you to see the words and read the words and take in the words and see if they resonate with you in a similar fashion they resonate with me. And so Langston Hughes, He is a poet, like I said, a writer, somebody who was definitely very influential, all the Renaissance. And that's pretty much the gist of that. Like I enjoy his words and his messages. But that kind of speaks to, my work in general, where it's kind of transitioned to. I was strictly just a portrait-based artist, but then I really got focused on messages because messaging is such a big deal and it's important to me. So a lot of my works have quotes from the people that I've painted. So if you see words on there, it's come from that specific person.
Is it okay if at this age I haven't found my passion like that?
So of course, like here's the thing I always try to keep in mind, and that's something that's important for you all to think about too. Is that if you have no clue what you're trying to do right now, that's okay. I mean, like literally, I didn't realize or even think about wanting to become an educator until my senior year in high school, and that was really by chance. And even then, I was still questionable on it because I thought I wanted to be a college professor more than I wanted to be a high school teacher. My focus on really what pushed me to go in the direction I wanted to go to is I tried to take the things that I was good at and put them together. So I love football. I love playing football. I knew I wanted to coach. I also loved drawing. I loved art. But I also loved working with people and talking to people and being around people. How do I mesh all that together? Well, how do I be an art teacher and coach? That's kind of what was my direction. Was that my end game? No. I didn't think I was going to get into administration. Had no desire to do that. Nor was it a really, a plan of mine. But something that I learned a long time ago is that if you're open and you're flexible and you're willing to listen, your path will be guided for you. And so at your age, really the main thing that you got to do is take a step in a direction, just in general. Once you take a step in a direction that is meaningful to you, something that means something to you, something that you're passionate about, a lot of times you will find your way along the way. You may not have the answer right now, but it's important to show up and it's important to take a step in the right direction so that you can figure out what it is that you really want. And so for me, I knew that I would get lost in a large college scene. And so really, I wanted to go somewhere that was smaller, that would give me the opportunity to know people's names. And so people would know my name. So that if I did struggle, and if I did fall, by the wayside, someone would be willing to be there to help me mentor and assist me in my process. And so that's why I chose to go to a school like KBC rather than go to a school like Western Kentucky. I felt like I would be another number and I'd be out of there in about a year or two. That was scary for me, okay? So I wanted to go somewhere where there was about the same number or a little bit less than my high school, and it worked out for me. That was personally me. That's what I wanted. I was good. I didn't want to have to worry about the big college scene because that wasn't important, okay? And in doing that, that's how I got a chance to meet some people who, number one, got a chance to know me, who I was as an individual, and really just help me build and become, kind of what I am today. You're never a set in stone product once you leave a certain place. So when you guys are ready to graduate, you're not a set in stone product. That will transition you to something else, something different when you get to college or when you get to the next phase of your life. Okay? You're always growing. You're always changing. You're always developing. You just have to be willing to allow yourself to do that.
Guys have any more questions?
I'll say this much. It's good to see you. I know most of you jokers in here. I'm telling you, but it's really good to see y'all. I've not seen you in a while. And I hope all is going to go for all of you. Okay, I wish the best for all of you. And every single last one of you definitely can have impact if you choose to continue to do your best to make sure that you put yourself in the best positions possible. Okay? And so, regardless of what's going on around you, regardless of how you feel about certain things, never allow that to dim your light. Never allow it to dim your shine. Because all of you guys have the capacity to do something great. Seriously. Okay? No more questions? I hope you got something out of it, guys. I really do. It definitely is one of those things where it's always nice to get a chance to talk to young people. because you guys are always so impactful. And so that's what we do it for. Anything from any of the adults?
I was gonna echo what you said, you don't have to figure out what you want to do now. I mean, I didn't really find my passion until, I had jobs, I went through college, went through grad school, and then found my passion in education when I was 32. So, and I realized that's where I want to stay. So, it doesn't always happen that way, but I don't know, it's just kind of a calling. It just kind of happened that way, and I'm glad I ended up where I am. So, if you have your friends that are like, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna go to med school, and they have like their whole life planned out, like don't let that freak you out.
No, it always changes.
It always changes, So it's really just a calling. I did want you to. I don't know if any of the students know who that musician is right there.
All right, raise your hand if you have an idea who that is. Oh my goodness, my man, can you tell me who it is, please?
Louie Armstrong.
My man, Louie Armstrong. Okay, so Louie Armstrong is literally one of the greatest jazz musicians to ever live. Okay, Louie Armstrong created works of art that transitioned past just black music. And he's one of the people who I would consider one of the first people to go mainstream jazz. And so he opened the doors for a lot. And when I say a lot of people who were paying attention to after he came through. And so when you want to talk about jazz becoming a big deal or a popular deal or even transitioning past just the Louisiana nightclubs and actually get into the ballrooms, he's the reason for that. And so a lot of people, pay homage and really, owe him a lot of respect. Ella Fitzgerald will be another person that would be in that list, that small list of people who broke grounds to transition past the Louisiana nightclubs. I say Louisiana because it's kind of the birthplace of jazz. If you don't know, a lot of people who are very, very good at what they did, they didn't necessarily get past that phase. But he was somebody who definitely was able to transcend that and becoming a world-renowned artist. That doesn't happen to very many people. It happened for him. And so he had a very iconic voice, not a very subtle voice. You hear his voice, you recognize it immediately. It's very, very raspy, but he was an amazing trumpet player too. So if you ever saw an older picture of him, his lips are distorted to a degree because of how often he played. It kind of spoke to his hard work and how often he was booked for shows. Literally his lips, he's had to have plastic surgery to repair his upper lip because of how often he played and performed. So it's definitely a challenge to know that somebody like that had to go through some of those small things to continue to stay as relevant as he was for as long as he was. Tell me somebody had longevity, Louie Armstrong is that person. So there's a lot of people worldwide that know Louie Armstrong. Okay? Definitely a very popular person. Yes, sir.
How much time do you put into something like Muhammad Ali?
So it varies, and honestly, I'm not the type of person that likes to spend a whole lot of time on something. I get really, I get in and I get out. Is what I always try to describe it. Just because, for me, I'm so focused on the energy that I have while in a piece. I'm so just invested in trying to see it come to fruition. But a lot of times, so I'll say, for example, this piece here took a long time because it took me a while to develop the concept. And plus I'm working from a photo that is screenshot from a video. So that's hard. But something like this, I'm taking 3 different photos and I'm putting it together. For example, the photo on the head is Ali, but the body is Marcy Luciano. And then the hands are somebody else, and then the ropes and I had to piece this together because it's not a visual that looks like this, but I'm trying to put it. So this one will take probably, 12 plus hours. But if you're talking about that Louie Armstrong piece, which, is far more detailed than that piece there, I only have about 5 hours in that piece because I was so interested and so invested in that piece. And I have 2 videos where it shows pretty much what I did to make that piece. But anything else I did after that was just kind of, fun, mixing colors in the background, just having a good time with it. But, I try not to spend a whole lot of time on the painting just because it gets stale, it gets old, it gets boring, and I'm not excited about it. So then it alters the look of the painting. And so I try to really get in and get out, try not to spend any more than about 10 hours total. Not at one time, but over the course of work on the piece. So yeah, I mean, it may take about 3 or 4 days, and I'm in and I'm done with the piece, But if I do anything else with it, it may just be like adding a quote to it, or maybe it's some slight details. So here's a question I always get, just people are always curious. How much do you all think I get for some of my paintings? I do sell it. I do. How much do you think I get?
I think it all depends on which one.
So give me an example.
That one go like 500.
You said 500? Okay.
This is every-
750? Okay. About 3,000?
10,000. Going up in money.
So this is something that you all will learn. The perception of art in Owensboro is completely different than outside of Owensboro. I can't state that enough. The perception of art in Owensboro is not the same. So this piece here, I have 5,000 on that piece.
I wasn't even close.
You said 500.
5,000 on that piece. Now, the most expensive painting that I've sold to date was 6,000.
Still, that's money right there.
I've sold 2 paintings to an NFL player for 4,000 a pop. I've sold over 10 paintings that were 2,000 plus. So I just went to a show in Louisville. Well, no, it wasn't just, but back in September or October, I always go to a show, St. James Art Fair in Louisville. And basically with an art fair, you set up your own tent. You set up your own basically little gallery space. It's a 10 by 10. It's outdoors. And people have the opportunity to come and check your stuff out, and they have a chance to buy your works. Not only do I sell originals, but I sell prints. I sell prints that are like 8.5 by 11, and I sell prints that are 13 by 19. And so my 8.5 by 11s are like $20, and my 13 by 19s are $45. Those things sell like hotcakes. Boom. I'll sell. So roughly, I sold, and this is all total, with originals and the prints included, I was able to make $13,000 in 3 days. So when people look at you and they tell you that your passion isn't valuable, you don't let that deter you. Your passion is valuable. There's going to be somebody out there that finds what you do as being worthy of having. There's going to be somebody that will be willing to come out of pocket to accept what you do, but you got to know your worth. Because I don't find what you all said in terms of those numbers disrespectful, because I believe the same things when I first got started. My very first show that I did in terms of an art fair was here in Owensboro, and literally I would have had, $400 on a painting. I would have had, $150 on a painting, because it's like, well, that's not what people would pay. But once you get outside of your small circle and you start thinking bigger, you realize that there's far more value in the work than what you do if you just look for it. So if there's anything that you get from this talk today, understand that much. You're valuable. You just gotta find where you're at.
Do you think, I don't know if you do this now, I know you might not have the time, but about teaching, like doing an art class at one of the universities, or, at KWC or Brush, or just, have you done any instructing in that sense?
No, not at the universities. Like, I was teaching art at the high school there for a little bit before stepping into administration. And so I have taught art classes. That's something that I feel like I definitely would be more open to when I get closer to that transition time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, all right, it's time to do something else.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm definitely, heavily focused on what I'm doing now. It would just, time would have to work out. Time is always a difficult piece, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for coming out and speaking with everyone. We appreciate it, and of course, sharing all this work. It's been amazing. Well, no more questions. Okay, we're gonna go talk about some school stuff now. So, we'll give you a round of applause. Good job. Thank you.